Welcome back. Today's conversation is one that every purpose driven woman in business needs to hear, especially if you've ever felt like the weight of caregiving, business growth, and big vision is all sitting on your shoulders. Today, I'm joined by the brilliant Javeste Dulcio, founder and CEO of Stork Fund, a first of its kind financial platform that helps parents and aspiring parents invest in the most important and often overlooked part of life and business, their capacity. So, with degrees from both Harvard Law and Cornell, Davis has spent her career building bold solutions to the financial challenges that so many women face, especially those navigating motherhood, entrepreneurship, and legacy work all at once. So, in today's episode, we're going to talk about why most women don't think about financial infrastructure until it's too late, think myself included, and how to shift that, what it really means to build something that's aligned with your mission, but also outside of your comfort zone, and then how treating your personal life like a strategic asset can actually unlock more clarity, growth, and freedom in your business. So, whether you're already a mom, planning to be one, or simply building a business that supports the life you want, this episode is a permission slip to reimagine what growth can look like with more support and less strain. So, Jabaz, thank you so much for being here. I am really excited to dive into this topic.
First of all, thank you for having me. I am super excited as well.
I found you through, I think, some search on LinkedIn, but I was just so inspired when I saw what you were doing. And then, of course, I dug into your story and I knew that I had to talk with you. So, thank you for coming on here today. But for all of our listeners who might not have heard of you or Stork Fund before, I'd like to start with a little background story. So, can you share more about what led you here? Like, just
Mhm.
an overview of what your story is.
I have always just been really excited about and really inspired by, it sounds really corny, but financial security. I think that my lens and my perspective was really rooted in economic mobility, a little bit about inequality. I majored in industrial and labor relations when I was in college. And so I was also fascinated by the workplace, organizational design and behavior, how you incentivize people, the real and true engines of our economy. And then I paired that with work around institutional racism and inequality. I went to law school. I thought I would be a labor lawyer or I thought I would be a social justice lawyer. And as it turns out, I became a corporate attorney. I did that at a really big law firm, a Wall Street law firm called Skadden for almost 10 years. I was really surprised by how much I enjoyed it, how good at it I was, considering the background that I had sort of coming into that. And I'd always thought that I would do impact work, but I had a lot of student loans and I figured I'd do that for a couple of years. And then almost a decade later, I still wasn't done with financial services, sort of as a corporate attorney. I joined an investment fund. Ultimately, I found my way to a startup. I was employee number one. It was a fintech. That never happens for attorneys. We are not innovators. We're not creators. We are people who create problems, people who block innovation. That's the stereotypes, at least. And so having the opportunity to build a fintech platform from 0 to 1 over a number of years was really exciting and informative, not only because it introduced me to these other skills that I knew that I had and that I got to really develop, but also because in a way that I hadn't planned, it sort of reintroduced myself to myself because we were building something for families that were on the financial margin. So these were people who maybe they'd experienced an income disruption, maybe they had poor credit, but for whatever reason, they had this incredibly challenging financial situation they were trying to navigate. And they felt that the only way for them to get out of that was to sell their home, right? For most Americans, your home is your biggest asset. And you don't like to think of it as an insurance policy, but if you can't get a home equity line of credit or you can't otherwise pull equity out of it and you've maxed out on all of these various payday loans, then you might just arrive at the difficult decision that, hey, we're going to have to liquidate this really big asset and just reframe our lives, in the aftermath. And so we wanted to build something that allowed people to refresh their finances, didn't require them to sell their home, let them stay in their homes. And it was such impactful work. We felt it, we heard it from the people that we worked with. And when I exited that opportunity, because we ended up being acquired by a bigger company that was operating in the space, I knew that I wanted to never go back to financial services work in general. I knew that I wanted to build something for people. And I felt that now I had this incredible resume that I really hadn't set out to design for myself, but I had all of this financial services experience. I had all of this operator and builder experience. I still had my passions around economic mobility and helping people and families and generations acquire and build and secure their wealth. And for me, Stork Fund is really just a culmination of all of those things. It came out of a conversation that a friend of mine was having about her own maternity leave. And she's based in the UK, actually. And so women get up to a year of maternity leave that they can take in the UK. It's not all paid, though, even though your job is protected. And so what ends up happening is that women of means will take the full year, and women that don't have the means to survive without their salary for a year, they still come back to work, much earlier. And so she had saved up, even though she was a woman of means. If she hears this, she'd be like, wait a minute now. But she saved up for a little bit of her maternity leave, and it made all of the difference. And I just remember thinking to myself, particularly with the experience that was really fresh for me with the prior fintech that I worked at, why aren't more people doing this? One of the things that we saw at that prior fintech was that people were willing to sell their homes because they needed $4,000 or $5,000. And I think when people think about savings as a strategic tool to get themselves financially secure, they're thinking, well, I need 20,000 or 25 or 30. But the reality is you need what you need at the moment that you need it to prevent you from making a poor decision that then compounds over time, right? You take that first payday loan and then it turns into another, or you exit the workforce because you can't afford childcare. And then you come back years later. And in some respects, a lot of the damage has already been done. Really reframing that thought to the idea that actually, if we can just help people save for 6 months of childcare or save for maternity leave so they don't have to go in debt just to stay at home, with their infant child, or save for summer camp, or save for braces, so that by the time they put it on their credit card and the 18 months of interest free is done, they have the full payment to pay it off. All of these strategic ways that we can help people extend their own financial runway by centering their family life cycle expenses just felt like a very natural way to pair together all of the different facets of myself, but also to just respond to what felt like a very real problem for parents, particularly working parents, particularly working moms. And so I'm just really excited and in a lot of ways just really honored to be able to be building this platform, because my hope and my dream is that it's really transformative for what women can now achieve in the workplace and in their families, because they've introduced another lever or another tool in their toolkit that can enable them to better navigate.
I love that. Thank you. And it's so incredible. I wish I had this when I was having my kids, because even in our schools and from a young age, we're not necessarily taught how to save and invest and to prepare for these bigger things, even a down payment on a home or
Mhm.
maternity leave, because here in the US, you get 6 weeks, 12 weeks,
Yeah,
and it's not always.
likely unpaid. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Or that women that are running their own business, like a lot of our listeners, like unless you save for it or plan for it, you're not necessarily getting paid while you're not working unless your business is set up to run without you. And so having something like you're offering is incredibly important and powerful. And then I want to point out another thing that you said too around having the means so that you don't have to make those bad decisions, because then you open one loan, you then open another, and it's just kind of that like compound effect. So maybe can you just unpack a little bit, like how do you help women or families plan for this, or where do you start with someone? What does that look like?
Yeah. Really great questions. And by the way, thank you for the feedback. I love to hear moms, express how great a Stork Fund account would have been in their own, motherhood journey. So thank you for that. But, one of the things that we really learned, we spent over a year actually just researching. So talking to parents, talking to aspiring parents, talking to employers, who in some ways also are impacted by the family affordability crisis that a lot of families are navigating. And one of the things that we really realized is that if you have a family, that is the biggest investment you will make in your life. And if you're not really able to navigate that stage well, you're not really setting yourself up for long term success. And if you don't set yourself up for long term success, you're not really handing off financial security to your children either. So there's a little bit of a cyclical nature there. And it's so interesting to us that family life cycle expenses are probably the biggest driver of whether or not you're financially secure or not, right? It's not the unplanned emergencies necessarily. It's the predictable recurring expenses that are really hammering on families. And despite that, it's almost like these expenses are an afterthought. People are strategically saving for retirement, which is like 40, 50, I mean, in today's America, maybe 60 years down the line, and they're forfeiting strategic decisions in the near term. And so what that means is they might be taking money out of their 401k early. They might be paying taxes. They might be paying penalties because they're not really addressing the near term with the correct perspective. It's not really the fault, by the way, of parents. Like, there's a number of reasons that this is the case. I think first and foremost, there is no financial infrastructure for this. That's what we're building. There are 401ks for retirements. There's HSAs for healthcare savings. There's 529s for college. But there isn't a universal approach for family life cycle expenses. And so also what that tells people is, well, this isn't a thing to save for. That's just life. You kind of just get by. And then what that also means is that family expenses are really treated almost like unexpected expenses, even though they are very much desired milestones that we expect and hope to be spending our funds on. And so what we want to do and what we are doing with Stork Fund is we're introducing a completely new paradigm, which is everything should be centered around your family life cycle expenses. If you get those things correct, you have the opportunity, you have the cash flow to then be able to do other things. And so your financial strategy is driven by your family life cycle expenses. Whereas now, for a lot of families, those expenses break the financial strategy. Let's say, for example, you're a mom. And within your Stork Fund app, you might be saving for a number of things. You might be saving for fertility treatments, maybe because you know that you'll need them to expand your family. You might be saving for summer camp because obviously that's coming up and kids are out of school and you want to stay productive either because you're working or because you're an entrepreneur and you still are going to need that time to dedicate to your business. Maybe you're saving for enrichment activities for one of your children as well. And the idea is that because you can be strategic about these things, right? You can think ahead. We can also within the platform suggest things to you. So we might say, hey, we see that you're saving up for fertility, or we see that you're expecting. Are you going to need a nurse? Are you going to need a lactation consultant? Are you going to need a motherhood coach to help you navigate this new transition of your life? Here's what those things cost. By the way, here are providers that we can connect you with and they'll give you a discount. Do you want to set a savings goal around that? So that when you rock up to that next stage, you're already prepared. You've sort of already tied down your biggest expenses. And really, you've done that through very consistent and very strategic saving. And again, it sort of goes back to that idea that you don't need to save $20,000. You actually just need to start saving and you need to be consistent about it. And as you knock one hurdle down, that just creates more opportunities for you. Maybe you can work harder. Maybe you can work longer. Now that creates more revenue for the family. And so we often find that not being able to pay for the things and the support that your family needs hampers your ability to generate wealth for yourself. And now you're in this downward spiral where maybe it's not downward, but it certainly isn't upward. And so what we're trying to do with parents, and even again with aspiring parents, because they have the benefit of time, is really just show people the benefit of that and have a savings platform that just allows people to make better decisions ahead of time, more strategic, and to think about all of the things that they need for their family. And then have a really cool and curated marketplace where they can get discounts to extend that spending even further.
Oh my gosh, I love that. And I feel like you are talking directly to me. And this is something that I really need. So both of my husband and I own our own businesses. I would say we weren't the best of savers and we like to oh, I want that. We just buy. And like you said, we're not especially the best at planning for those normal everyday family expenses that come with having 4 kids, right? And so sometimes that can cause a downward spiral or never feel like we're getting ahead, right? And so we're, now this year really trying to look at, okay, we want to be able to have the right amount for the future, but also enough to live the way we want, right?
Yeah.
That freedom that we started our businesses for. I may be not the only one that might feel that it's a big undertaking. Like,
Yeah.
right, even start.
Mhm. But you know what's so interesting about particularly moms that are entrepreneurs, right? Is the way that I know that you think about your business, right? Which is really trying to understand your working capital, right? What's your inflows? What's your outflows? How are you timing those things? What are going to be your next bills? Are they monthly? Are they quarterly? And are the inflows going to match that? And you're almost sort of always thinking about your runway and how do you extend it. And sometimes it's not bringing in more money, it's being more mindful of how you're spending it.
Mhm.
And that same approach that we take in the business context is almost exactly what we're trying to do at Stork Fund, except with your family life cycle expenses. It's those very same questions around what can a little bit of proactivity buy you? What can a little bit of intentionality and strategy do for you? And we don't want it to feel overwhelming, right? So when you open your account, we'll ask questions like, well, how many children do you have? And what are their ages? Are they newborns? Are they toddlers? Is your family complete or do you want to expand it? What are some really important milestones in the near term and in the short term? And all of that is going to feed the suggestions that we give you, the providers that we refer to you, the milestones that you're going to set for yourself. And so we want it to not be overwhelming. We want it to feel very intuitive, enabled by data driven and AI sort of insights, but to really help you map out what your family's working capital is going to look like. So you can sort of see before you get there, what are the gaps? What are the big expenses? How am I timing everything? Should I knock, little things off bit by bit? And almost have a helper, in that regard so that you're not doing it all by yourself. But it really is the mindset that we're already using. It's just applying it to something that I think we've all been encouraged to almost treat a little haphazardly, but with a different approach, you can really get so much more out of every dollar that you put in.
100%. And yes, I will have all of those links in the show notes for your wait list. I know I'm going to join the wait list. 100%. But it's just so, so important because I do think many of our listeners are in that building season, both in their business, but also maybe in their family and planning for those future decisions, even if they're not sure what that looks like. And so do you have any, I guess, recommendations or tips for these women before they can download the app? What are things they can be doing to kind of get their things in order?
I think people should almost do an audit of where they are today in terms of their family and where they want to be in terms of their family, but then also do the same exact audit for their professional sort of desires. So, where is your business today and where do you want it to be? And where's your family today and where do you want it to be? And just sort of be transparent with yourself about where there might be tensions because it's those tensions that you can proactively work to mitigate. So if you do want to take some time off, from your entrepreneurial activities, it's great. How are you going to fund your family? How are you going to maybe continue to pump resources into your business at the same time so that you can return and hit the ground running? Those kind of insights are actually going to drive the strategy. And so I think sometimes having those tough conversations with ourselves, and they're tough because we don't want to hear the answer sometimes, but also it takes energy and a little bit of foresight and insight to even come up with the answer and a bit of transparency that we sometimes don't give ourselves. But that's really the first thing is understanding where the tensions are between where you are and where you want to be, both personally and professionally. They are equally valid. and you want to understand where those gaps are. And then I think once you sort of understand where the gaps are, it's really good to understand, well, what are things going to cost? We speak to so many parents that are saying, I've tried to save, but I don't know what I'm saving for, how much it's going to cost. Have I met the goal? I never really know until I show up. And then I realize, wow, I'm actually unprepared. I was talking to a mom the other day. She runs this platform called Parent Collective. Her name is Jessica Hill. And she was talking to me. She's a mom of a teenager. And she was saying, I wish I knew that when I had a teen, I needed to save for the fact that my insurance would go up because now they're driving, or I needed to save for the fact that I now want to pay for them to have driver's classes. And these are things that our app will tell you, but these are things that ahead of the app, you can start thinking about yourself, when you think about your family's next step and start pricing those things. And then you can start to think about, well, what's a consistent plan to help me get there? There's all sorts of financial products out there, whether they are high yield savings accounts. I mean, the cool thing about Stork Fund is that we're really trying to help people appreciate whatever they put into their Stork Fund. So we'll have the capability to get employer matching, very similar to your 401k. So that will be a way that if you're saving for your family, you can add funds on top of that because your employer is supporting. We're offering a competitive yield. We're offering discounts from providers. And so you can start to think about, how can I piece together, so many different things out there so that I'm not just putting a dollar in and getting a dollar out, but I'm putting a dollar in and getting $2 or $3 out, and sort of plan a roadmap for yourself around that. Obviously together, with your partner, if that happens to be your situation as well, two are better than one, and being aligned in terms of strategy and how you're saving and how you're spending just will allow you to optimize that strategy for yourself. But for us, I think where it starts out with is just a little bit of transparency and knowing where your goals are. It's much easier to get somewhere if you know where you're going. And that's a really, really great place to start.
I like that you said to not just looking at personal, but also looking at business. And because so often as entrepreneurs, it blends with our personal life,
Where is
right?
the difference?
Yeah, exactly. Like it's all the same.
It's
It's
the other baby.
100%. And so, how do we make sure those things align? And planning, just like you said, the inflow, outflow, making sure you have that runway. And then, what I think about too is, one reason that I started my business is so that I have the freedom to take off when my kids are sick because we all know that happens. Take them on vacations on spring break or, just do those different things where I don't have to ask for, can I take this day off?
Permission.
Right, permission, but also so I can afford to do that, right?
Mhm.
If I'm not saving, if I'm not planning ahead, it's still not allowing me to do those things I set up to
Yes.
do, right?
Yes. So
And
many people see savings as like a use of cash and not as a source of cash, which I find to be so interesting because I think you're exactly right, which is savings unlocks opportunities for you. Like one of the things I tell my team is that, we can't prepare for what we haven't acknowledged is a reality. And so I almost feel like that's what savings is. It's acknowledging the reality that there is a gap and it's closing the gap so that you can have all of these, experiences that are important and meaningful to your family. People should have the family life cycle experience that they want and feel like they deserve to have. And oftentimes, yes, there might be a really big gap that just savings isn't going to bridge. But our thesis is that for a lot of families, the difference between where they are and where they want to go is something that can actually and meaningfully be tackled by just being a little bit more strategic and intentional about how you're saving and spending.
will your platform help parents that maybe feel like they're so far behind and don't know how to even start to save it?
Yeah,
Like that's something that your app or
yeah,
your platform can help with as well.
absolutely. There's so much research out there that says people who save, even if it's like $1 a month, outperform, and I mean financially speaking, people who don't save within every income bracket. And so, what that also means is that saving, especially if done early and consistently, can outperform a higher salary. You can get yourself the raise that you want or the increase in revenue that you want just by starting to adopt better savings habits. And so for people who feel like they're so far behind, there's probably small things that you can do, small wins that you can get for yourself, small savings goals that you can set for yourself that not only will prove to you the purpose and the benefit and the positives around savings, but then also encourage you to keep at it, get better, devote more resources to it, be a little bit more strategic about it. You know, bad decisions start a really, I guess, poor cycle, but also good decisions start a very virtuous cycle. And just like interest compounds, bad decisions, and I use them in quotes because nobody's intentionally making, bad decisions, but decisions when you feel like your back is up against the wall, those things compound as well. And so very small behavioral changes are associated with really outsized returns if you just stay at it and stay consistent. And so that's really, our message. Even if you are a parent and you feel like you've lost so many years or you're so far behind, if you probably do the math, you might be a few $1,000s away from a complete financial reset. And a few $1,000s, if you're targeting those things strategically, could be a year or less of intentional work. And so we want to be able to support those families, especially as they grow through their family life cycle. And we're building something that we hope will resonate, not just with people of means that have the disposable cash to very easily save, but also for people who feel like they're on the margins because, statistics and research really shows that this is a thing that can help you get over that margin.
That is incredible. And especially with all of the things happening in the United States right now. And
All of the things. So
yeah,
many things.
that's just where I'm going to go with that. I won't go any deeper there. But it's really important to have this stability. And I also think, like you said, even if it's just that one shift or starting small or just starting somewhere, can have
Mhm.
that positive effect. And I think when you feel more secure, your energy shifts, your mindset shifts, like so much shifts that allows you then to keep doing more. And it has that positive influence. I love that you brought that up because I've seen it. I think it's so true. I mean, I still have a long way to go,
We all do.
but just those small things can really make a big difference.
Yeah, I'm a huge energy person as well. One of the things I tell myself, there's so many good lessons in kids' movies. If you've ever watched the Pixar film about the emotions, um, gosh, I can't think of the name. But it's these emotions that are controlling a young girl as she makes different decisions about her life. I've sort of taken on that paradigm to myself, and the emotions might have been like happiness and fear and sadness and jealousy. And if I'm making a decision, I do ask myself, like, well, which of the emotions is at the console, right? Like, who's making the decision here? Is it happiness or is it fear? And I do feel like if you feel financially insecure, you probably have fear making a lot of the decisions at your console. And having a little bit more control over your finances or even feeling like you have more control, seeing a little bit of hope, I think, on the other side can make the decision maker switch. And all of a sudden, you're making your decision out of a place of happiness or hope or expectation or excitement. And I think that that also starts to have a virtuous impact on, other things and other aspects of your life and how you show up in your family and in your entrepreneurial efforts and activities. And so as much as it's about saving and spending, it is also about, well, what is your mindset? And do you have a healthy relationship with money and with what you're able to do with your money? Because again, those are also drivers of what ends up being, the life that you create for yourself.
Yes. And that goes to first, if you think of the movie that you're talking about, please tell me
It's
because
gonna bother me. I'm listening to you, but I might be Googling it behind the scenes just so I can say
I,
it.
I really do want to watch that movie now because I do think it's important. When you said that, it made me think of, and now I'm going to totally draw a blank on what I was even circling back to. Oh my gosh, I totally lost it.
While you recover, I have also just recovered. So the movie is called Inside Out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yes, we have to watch that.
I have two of them now, both really, really great.
Okay. Well, I need to watch that. I'm going to put that on my list because it is so important. I think what it comes down to is being aligned in our businesses and making those decisions from a place of happiness versus fear is going to get us a lot further. And now I know what I was going to say was a lot of when I talk to women about what is their goal, what is their vision of success, right? It's not always about the money, but what the money helps us be able to do is make a greater impact, to have the freedoms we want to have, right? Money allows us to do so many things if we just make it a partner in our journey. And I learned that from another gal that I
Love
was
that.
talking. But if we make it a partner in our journey and view it as something that can help us, right? And so not having this fear, but the happiness around it. And I also know that when there is scarcity or when you don't feel like you have enough, it can be hard to have that happiness. Right?
Yes.
So that comes back to what you're doing in building that up, right? Building up those funds so that you can have that.
I remember speaking to someone, a potential investor actually in Stork Fund. He's a father. And he said something to me during our chat, and he was like, it's not about the money, it's about the dreams. And I
Mhm.
just loved the way that he framed it. And I think it's exactly what you're saying, which is it isn't about the money. As much as this is a savings and an investment and a smart spending platform and all of the things, it's about, well, what is that going to power? What dreams that you had for your family are you now able to fulfill? What opportunities for your children are you now able to unlock? You know, what aspects of your professional career now become accessible to you because you have this financial flexibility. And it really just is a bridge to the next thing. And I think those of us who grew up in, you know, financial situations or scenarios where we were either middle class or maybe lower middle class, like I think we looked at people that had all these great opportunities and we thought to ourselves, oh, they had money, you know, they just or came from a family with money. And so that idea that like great things happen if you have money is very like intrinsically felt within us, which is I can convert money into experiences and a better life. And that is why it is so important to be strategic about those things, because then what you can buy for yourself, quote unquote, ends up being the things that you want and the opportunities that, you know, your family deserves.
Yes. So I think that kind of perfectly leads into what I always like to ask all of the women that I have on here. But how do you define success today? What does that look like for you? And maybe how it was different? Because I know our past is like yours. You know, you went to be a lawyer and now you're building a business that's going to impact so many people. So what
Yeah.
does success look like for you?
I think that I've now reverted back to an answer that I think I would have given when I was 18. You know, success for me is helping people, building something or doing something that is generationally important and significant, not because it's cool necessarily, but because its impact is far reaching. I was such a visionary as a young girl. And then I started my corporate career, and then success started to feel differently. It was get on this big deal and maybe make a partner and get all these different titles. I want to be a general counsel. And then, well, what type of company? A publicly traded company with thousands of employees. A very resume driven approach to success, I will say. And now I'm just back at the impact. Now I'm just like, success for me is 10, 15, 20 years down the line, every 18-year-old girl opening up a Stork fund when she gets her first job. So that by the time she has kids, she's maybe 10, 15, $20,000 into her savings, and she shows up to parenthood with all the financial resources, with all the ability to make decisions, you know, for herself and for her career. And multiply that by all of, you know, the young girls. I think for me, that is where I envision Stork Fund, where like people have retirement funds and like there's VC funds, there's a Stork Fund. And we're also judging men, you know, as well. When You're talking about your potential guy. You're like, well, he has a great job. He has Stork Fund. This is what I want for my idea of success. I want to build something that's impactful. And I think when people open Stork Fund accounts, when they have the opportunity to, we're going to be listening. If there are moms that are interested in supporting Stork Fund in a real way, we're putting together an advisory board so that moms can continue to give direct input to the team as we're building and we're iterating. What do you want? What do you need? What's good? I want to build something that's responsive. And so success for me too is not my own vision, but the vision of the community that I'm looking to serve and, hoping to serve and giving them something that they feel is valuable. I'm not a mom yet, ironically. We talk about our users as parents or aspiring parents. I'm on the aspiring parent side. That's my contribution. But I think a little bit of success too it would be transitioning from the aspiring parent to the parenting side. So maybe I'll be back to talk about that crazy navigation
Yeah,
one day.
I will be following your journey. It's so inspiring. And I do believe that will 100% happen because this is incredible. I think it's needed. It's something that is not out there. And there's so many parents, even just around me, that I know that could benefit from this. I know I could and could have, too, when I was in that stage. I am done having children for enough. And I am so blessed with four
Yes.
beautiful boys. But there's a lot ahead of us too, right? There's so many things that we want to be able to save for and those experiences to provide for our boys. And just food. I mean, these little they eat us out of house at home already. And they're not like teenagers yet. So I've built a big garden. I'm gonna have to start my own farm out here. But
You're like, these will be home fed children.
exactly. So Javeste, thank you again so much. Where can people, again, I will have all the links, but where can people find you, sign up for the wait list, tell us all the things?
Yes, all the things. So our website is www.storkfunds, that's funds with an S.com. That's also our social handles. You can find us on Instagram. You can find us on LinkedIn. If you wanted to reach out to me directly, my email address is the letter J, at storkfunds.com. I read every single email. And so I would be really excited to hear from you, whether it's just feedback or thoughts, all is very welcome. If you'd like to join the wait list, that would be great. And, maybe Hailey, you and I could talk about some kind of invitation code that we can give to your to your listeners, invitation code to your listeners, and we can, make sure that they get some kind of, incentive for joining as a result of having listened to the podcast. And so maybe you can include that in the info you share as well. I think your community is great and exactly the kind of community we're looking to support. So hopefully, they can engage with us on any one of those mediums.
Thank you again. I will include all of that for sure so our listeners can sign up for the wait list and just follow along with your story. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.